Hello, welcome to the first weeknight edition of McKnight Tonight. I am Rob McKnight. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, if you can, please watch the stream on our YouTube page, as that has now been monetized, and maybe, just maybe, one day we'll actually start making some money from this little venture as we make an internet TV show from our garage. Geez, that'd be nice. Just go to youtube.com/@McKnight That's youtube.com/@McKnight And good on you. You've remembered to tune in on our first Monday show as part of our new 4 nights per week lineup. McKnight Tonight is here every Monday, Wednesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. with my media show, Media McKnight, coming to you on Tuesdays. Okay, there's a lot to discuss on this Monday, the 14th of July, so let's get into our hot topics. And there's an ongoing discussion about Victoria's road safety rules after a 91-year-old driver lost control and killed a 59-year-old woman. This story from 7 News will give you some background.
Emotions still bring Tracy Jean to her knees after she cradled a 2-year-old boy when he was hit by an elderly driver walking along this Wanturna South footpath with his grandparents.
He just kept saying car, 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 and then he wrapped his arms around my neck and just wouldn't let me go.
His grandmother couldn't be saved. His grandfather on the driveway of Heather Webber's home. She rushed out after hearing the loud bang.
And I didn't even know the lady was here behind me till I turned round. And I could see her lying on her back, but I didn't know whether she was breathing or not.
They'd been struck by a 91-year-old woman whose car mounted a curb on Coleman's Road.
So I was really shaken, and I still am. I just can't believe it's happened.
The scene of the tragedy quickly building with floral tributes today.
We just want to bring some love to show our respect.
Walking, where you think you're going to be safe, that's hard to fathom, really.
The vehicle only came to a stop after hitting this park bench metres from a playground. 7 News understands the 91-year-old doesn't drive regularly due to medical issues.
The tragedy has led to questions of possible testing for over 75s. Victoria currently requires licence renewal every 3 years for drivers over 75, but there's no mandatory medical or driving test, and after the crash, Acting Premier Ben Carroll said it's a valid question whether that should change. Across the country, the rules vary. In New South Wales and the ACT, drivers over 75 must visit their GP annually, and at 85 they need to pass a driving test every 2 years. But in Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania and the Northern Territory, there are no compulsory checkups or retesting. That proposal to require regular testing for over 75s is gaining traction. Supporters say it could prevent more tragedies by identifying risks early. But critics argue it unfairly targets older Australians, the vast majority of whom are safe, responsible drivers. It's a dodgy one, this, isn't it? It's a tricky one because people get upset about this idea of requiring older Australians to be tested. But I think we should be testing every year. Driving somehow has become a right and not a privilege in our country and pretty much everywhere around the world. These are big machines that can do a lot of damage. And so I don't think it's too much to have an age limit, whether that's 75, whether it's 80, whatever it might be, to have regular medical checkups and a driving test, maybe at 75 every 2 years, maybe once you hit 85 every year. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I know that something needs to change. But I'd actually go one further. I actually think we should have tests every 5 years for drivers of all ages. And I'm not saying you should have to do parallel parking and stuff like that. That's not what makes a driver. A driver is being able to look at the road, not do 50 in a 70 zone, but also not speed, and also know the rules when it comes to blacked out traffic lights. The wild weather we had here on the East Coast just a few weeks ago, I'm driving through and I was in New South Wales at the time. And what happened? There were blacked out lights and people didn't know what to do. It's a stop sign. You're meant to get to the line and stop. Even if there's nothing there, you're meant to stop. Look, the first person there has right of way. Then the next person queued up. You don't get a line of cars that can just go through. That's not what you're allowed to do. You are meant to treat it as a stop sign. And it's like a roundabout. You don't always give way to the right. The first person on the roundabout has the right of way. These are basic rules that people don't know. Let's test people on these. Let's make sure people know the basics. I think there's validity in having those driver safety courses and having people go through those to be able to make sure they are equipped to drive on the road. This isn't just an age issue. Although I think we hit a point where everyone reacts differently to old age. Some people at 90 are better than I'll ever be. Some people at 60 don't keep up with the 90-year-old. So 75 seems to me like a good place to start regular testing and regular tests. Medical examinations should be mandatory. Tests should at least be every 2 years. We need to make these changes. And as I said, I think we should bring it in every 5 years for all drivers. Could you imagine? That might get some idiots off the road. All right, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Should we have more testing for over 75s? I look forward to seeing your comments in the comments section of this video on Facebook and YouTube. All right, moving on. And it's the leak the government didn't want you to see. And tonight, despite desperate efforts to bury it, the full story is out. A Freedom of Information request by the ABC accidentally included some damning advice to the Albanese government within the heavily redacted document. Now, this leaked brief covers key economic concerns, recommending raising taxes, slashing spending, and a brutal conclusion that Labor's promise to build 1.2 million homes won't be met. Adding to the drama, Treasury even asked the ABC to delete the file, which only made them go digging deeper to find out what they had missed. Now, that led the reporter to going through both versions of the report, the redacted version and this new version that they had sent. And finally, he and his team finally found a table of contents, which revealed what was in the redacted parts of the report. It was a mistake that led the ABC to going deeper and finding out much more than the government intended. For his part, Treasurer Jim Chalmers tried to play down the leak at a press conference this morning.
First of all, you're responding to some headings in the advice that we've got in the incoming government brief. Obviously, Treasury advises governments of both political persuasions. That advice can't be always adequately captured in the subheadings which are reported in documents which are sent in error. And what's happened here is a Treasury official has sent those documents in error. That sort of thing happens from time to time. I'm pretty relaxed about it, to be honest. Because, of course, Treasury provides advice for incoming governments and no government typically goes into the detail of that.
But isn't that the problem? The government redacts so much detail in a document obtained through freedom of information that we can only go by some headings in a table of contents that were accidentally included. And look at the way you tried to deflect the story, making the point it was accidentally released, like it diminishes the contents of what we found out. What is the justification for redacting the information provided by Treasury? Freedom of information is supposed to be a tool used by journalists and the public to hold governments to account. It's part of a free and democratic society. In his article about the leak, the reporter makes the point that the immense restrictions on what they, i.e. people using FOI, can seek, combined with the broad ability of decision makers to redact information, have given it a joke name among those groups, FFI, Freedom from Information. Exactly. These governments are just saying, no, you can't have that. They're getting the red pen. Nope, 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 nope. And this is stuff, what is so wrong with us knowing what the advice from Treasury was to the incoming government of the day? That's not a state secret. Because now Jim Chalmers is saying, he's out there saying, yep, we've seen that. We've been reacting to it. We're putting A, B and C in. But to be honest, you guys shouldn't know about this. This isn't your place. Yes, it is, Jim Chalmers. It is our place to know what is going on with our government and what Treasury thinks is the financial state of the country. We can't trust politicians to tell us the truth. I actually think there should be an ombudsman to oversee what is and isn't redacted, and a method where journalists and the public can go back and say, this is ridiculous. All this stuff has been redacted and look at it. It's obviously stuff that doesn't need to be. I think the problem is politicians are so scared of a gotcha moment, so scared that the media are going to find something out, so scared that they don't get to control the narrative. And even the Prime Minister today in China, he was there giving a press conference. He was asked a question. He said, well, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not going to respond to every blog. Well, this is the day and age, Prime Minister. It's not just the Daily Telegraph and the Age that run the agenda. The internet is changing the world, and the sooner these politicians realise that, the better. Places like McKnight tonight and the various other news opinion videos that are being made each and every day, which is the biggest growing part of YouTube. The sooner politicians realise that this is the next evolution of how we consume media, the better off they'll be, and they need to start answering questions because we're starting to see the truth. And these games you play of deflection might work on a news story at the 6 p.m. news where they've only got 1:20 to tell their story. But here, I can run those longer grabs. I can have a look at what you're saying, and we can learn as an audience. Your time is up, politicians. You need to start paying attention. You need to be more transparent with the people voting you in.
It's the random live shot of the day. Where are you going today? You'll never know where you'll end up with the random live shot of the day.
Oh, yes, it's time for a random live shot of the day. And tonight we're escaping to paradise, the Hard Rock Hotel in the Maldives. Now, this resort is built across a private lagoon and connected to a footbridge to a marina filled with luxury yachts. That'd be nice. Not bad for a Monday escape. Weather-wise, it's a classic tropical day, humid with scattered sunshine and some light rain, reaching a top of 31 degrees. And dipping to 27 overnight. Water temperature, though, it's a balmy 29, perfect for a dip. I have to say, I was getting a little bit worried. I was watching the live feed earlier tonight, and it looked like it was about to rain, but it's come good again. So, yes, thanks to the Hard Rock Cafe in the Maldives for our random live shot of the day. Love that. Thank you. All right, let's get to your feedback, which is coming through thick and fast tonight. Casabra, that's actually Carlotta, the iconic entertainer. She says she loves the truth on this show. Thank you, Carlotta, and we love you, as you well know. Who else have we got there, Jazzy, on the social media for me tonight? Oh, speaking of which, Daniel Rose says, time to get Jazzy Mac behind the mic and on screen. I wonder why she put that one up. All right, over the page we go. Dylan says, interesting idea, might see a reduction in the number of crashes. This is about the idea of testing over 75s, but I say test everyone every 5 years. Might also see people actually use the indicator for a change when turning or changing lanes. That's very true, Dylan. Who else have we got there? Still on YouTube, Daniel again. Why only older drivers? Why not retest anyone that has an accident by default? Make sure they're road safe. Oh, Daniel, I actually agree with that. I think that's a really good idea. And I was saying that I think people my age, all drivers should be tested every 5 years, but I love the idea that people who have an accident, automatic retest. Good, like you're thinking there. Thank you, Daniel. All right, over the page we go. We've got Own Your Own Crazy. Rob McKnight for Federal BS Officer. Hey, you'll be right with McKnight. And I don't BS, I give you the truth. Jamie says, agree, for pollies, it's all about controlling the narrative. They hate when they can't. So true, Jamie. Who else have we got there? The feedback's coming in thick and thin. And if you're a first-time watcher or you watch all the time, you have to leave a comment so we know that you're there. Dylan says, loving all these lovely warm places that get shown. Thank you, Dylan. Now, I've got us on X tonight as well. So we're streaming there on X, and it's obviously a little bit behind. But what I'm loving is that there's people watching there. But, man, whack up the super, because if you are watching on X, could you do me a favour? Nip on over to YouTube. The address is there, youtube.com/@McKnight tonight, because we've monetized. We are our YouTube partner so that we can actually make some money from this little show. I think we're up to $20, isn't it, Amanda? $24. There you go. Every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. As was it Dylan who on Buy Me a Coffee actually gave me $20 for a bottle of wine, and that's what I'll be drinking on Thursday night when we do Tipsy Thursday. All right, plenty still to come in a moment. Oh, literally in a moment, we'll be meeting Dimity Clancy from 60 Minutes. She's got a new show. And a little later, if you love Is It Cake, you are going to love it when I give you a back-end quickie. All right, you are watching McKnight Tonight.
Here comes McKnight Tonight.
Well, it was one of the most heartbreaking and senseless crimes in recent Australian history. The murder of much-loved schoolteacher Stephanie Scott just days before her wedding sent shockwaves around the country. In April 2015, Stephanie was preparing for what should have been the happiest day of her life. Instead, her family were left planning her funeral. The 26-year-old had gone into her workplace, Leeton High School in New South Wales, to finish up some final admin before her honeymoon. She never came home. Cleaner Vincent Stanford, a man with a history of disturbing online behaviour, attacked and murdered Stephanie in a planned and brutal assault. He later burned her body in bushland and calmly returned to work. This week, Channel 9 is revisiting the case in a powerful new documentary special. An award-winning journalist, Dimity Clancy, features in the series. Dimity, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Thank you for having me, Rob. Nice to speak with you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. Dimity and I worked at Channel 9 for many years, and while that was generally a joyous experience, this is a case that really shocked Australia to its core, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And even when you say the name Stephanie Scott, I still get that feeling of what it was like to be out at Leeton. I was 6 months pregnant at the time. So I think that this was one of those stories that it was one of the first stories that I probably looked at through a parent's eyes, which it all changes, I think, as a journalist, when you become a parent. And I remember it so clearly, being in that community and the feeling of just angst, and everybody was just so gutted because Stephanie Scott was a much loved teacher of the community in southern New South Wales. So it's a case that will stay with me. I've covered lots of crime in my time as a journalist, and the story of Stephanie Scott is one that I will never forget. And in the upcoming series that is about to come out on Channel 9, you can just see that everybody involved in this case, no matter how you were involved, is still affected today.
Well, it's funny you say that, because you have actually called this the hardest story of your career. Why is that?
Well, I think it was because the brutality of it. And, Stephanie was about to get married. She was a young woman, with a beautiful fiance, Aaron. And even on the night of the murder, she was supposed to be having dinner at the local restaurant with him and never turned up. She was, everybody you spoke to, you just learnt of the beautiful heart that she had. She was loved by all of her teenage students. And, she was at the school on the Easter weekend, ahead of getting married, to do some work so that her relief teacher that was taking over from her, was fully prepared. That's just the sort of person that Stephanie Scott was. And I think as a crime reporter, you get to know families, and especially out in those regional areas, you get to know the families at the centre of these tragedies. And I got to know Rob and Marilyn quite well, Stephanie's parents, and also Aaron, during my time covering this case. And, you saw the impact on them, and you knew straight away that, there was some speculation that Stephanie was a runaway bride, that she got cold feet because she was so close to getting married. But you knew as soon as you touched down in Leeton that afternoon that this wasn't a case of a bride that, was nervous about getting married, that something had happened, that she just wouldn't do that. And that was, something that police quickly learned on this case, that what they were dealing with was something far more serious than, just a missing bride. And, but I don't think that anybody, journalist, police officer, detective, and especially Stephanie's family, ever expected the way that this case would turn out.
And it's usually in a case like that, when they discover it's not a runaway bride, but when it's something much worse, all eyes turn to the partner.
Absolutely. And you always, I think you just automatically think that, it was somebody that knew her, and never would you suspect that the cleaner at the local high school in a small community would be responsible, but also the cleaner would be such a depraved, cold-blooded killer at the same time. But this was some great detective work. They moved very quickly, and what they found out was shocking.
What was the motive?
This is the thing with Vincent Stanford. There is no motive. He is a person that has never shown emotion, never had any good explanation. I was just watching those police interviews over again, and he's just telling police that he wasn't angry. He always had thoughts of killing people, and he just had to kill her that day. And they said, they asked him, why Stephanie? Why? And he said, well, he just saw her, and he just said to himself, I have to kill her. He didn't feel any emotion, even as he was talking to detectives. This is a man who so depraved that he just showed nothing when he was talking about how he brutally, belt her with his own fists to kill her before sexually assaulting her and then taking her body into remote bushland and setting it on fire and taking photographs as well. I mean, this is the sort of person who was the man who murdered Stephanie Scott. He just, and then to learn, he grew up in the Netherlands, and then to learn when detectives went back to his hometown of the depraved sort of characteristics and behaviours that he had shown for years. And even in the town of Leeton, he had stalked a number of women. He'd taken photographs and knew what time a 12-year-old girl was at home. He had this sick obsession with women, and that was all of the information that was yet to be found out, let alone just having to try and face the brutal murder that detectives were dealing with.
Well, look, Nine has released a promo for the special. Let's take a look at it.
Stephanie Scott was last seen on Easter Sunday. It was supposed to be Stephanie's wedding day.
Murdered. Days before her wedding.
I think you went a little nuts. You went a little nuts, yeah?
For the first time.
The mystery gets deeper by the hour.
One of Australia's most evil crimes.
He was smirking.
The jaw-dropping confession.
Just wanted to go.
And the DNA twist.
Neither detective would have predicted.
That left our best cops.
He had an identical twin brother.
Speechless. Must see Natural Born Killer. Tuesday on 9.
On 9, yes, I love that voiceover. Dimity, a lot has been written about this case. What does your special add to the story?
It shows, the thing that stuck out for me when I watched it, you have two hardened country cops who, a decade on, are still reduced to tears when they talk about this case. And that's the sort of impact that, as I said, no matter what you had to do with this case, whether you were the detective dealing with Vincent Stanford himself, the forensic psychiatrist who's also involved in the special, police in Adelaide who were brought into the investigation at one point, myself as a journalist, Peter Overton as the presenter, everybody remembers this case and everybody was affected in one way or another. It was just one of those stories that will stay with you. And I think when you see, I don't know, maybe just the crime reporter in me, when you see a couple of country cops still affected like that, you know that this is a story that had impact.
It's funny you mentioned the crime report a bit because, as I mentioned at the beginning, we did work in the 9 newsroom in Sydney together, and your career has been amazing to watch. You, as you said, started off as a crime reporter. You then moved to a current affair. You were doing some fill-in work there. Then you've ended up on 60 Minutes. I mean, is that the top end of journalism? How do you feel when you look back at your amazing career?
Well, it was always, the job that I aspired to, the job that I wanted. I think every journalist should aspire to work on a program, with the prestige of 60 Minutes. And I think for me, the crime has always followed me. I'm actually writing a crime story now. I've just been up in the top end of Queensland, reporting on a story out there. So I think that crime still follows me a lot in my career. It's a beat that I know. Pardon?
Maybe that's a you thing.
Well, look, maybe I just naturally gravitate towards those stories, but I guess it's just something. It's the field that I know and I'm most experienced in. And I've obviously worked a lot with police around Australia for many years now. So you don't have to make me sound so old, Rob. I have been around a while, but so have you.
Don't worry. I'm sure I'm older than you. I certainly look it anyway. Hey, the special is called Murder Down Under, Natural Born Killer. It airs tomorrow night and Wednesday night at 8:30 on Channel 9. Dimity Clancy, you're a legend. I like seeing good people succeed, and I'm very happy for all your success. Thanks for joining us on McKnight tonight.
Thank you so much, Rob. Take care.
Okay, Amanda quickly just told me in that 5 seconds that there was a bit of a problem with some graphics. I didn't notice it, I've got to be honest. But if there was, what we'll do is we'll fix that up and we'll repost that interview. Thank you to Dimity for doing that. Look, I know you're in the mood for it, so let's have a back-end quickie. And tonight's edition was suggested by friend of the show, Sarah Monahan. And if you love the Netflix show Is It Cake? Honestly, you're going to love this. She's eating her couch. I cannot believe that pillow is a cake. This is good content if you're watching on the audio podcast. The cup's a cake. That's amazing. And the coffee table, not the television. Well, that's sacrosanct. Her phone. The hair straightener. And a hair, wow. I tell you what, after the hair, the fish food doesn't seem like much there, does it? Hey, thank you for your company tonight. And look, thank you for the feedback. Dylan just said, great interview, Rob. We have appreciated. If you're going to join us tomorrow night, well, it's Media McKnight tomorrow. So make sure you're watching at 9 o'clock. And Jeanette, I noticed that you said, I'm looking forward to Rob's rant. Well, I couldn't do it because I forgot to go and buy some snakes because I want to have a rant about Alan's new orange snakes. I'm not happy, and you know what that means. It'll be a Rob rant like no other, but I'll bring that to you on Wednesday. Now, there's a hook. Why wouldn't you be watching tomorrow for Media McKnight and Wednesday for a Rob rant on orange snakes? What more can we do for you? Thanks for your company. Make sure you watch us on YouTube at youtube.com/@McKnight tonight. I'm Rob McKnight. It's good night from McKnight. Hey, fancy.
McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. It's good night from McKnight tonight.